I'm Wolfgang Fahl. I'm from Bitplan, Germany, and I've been working with Semantic Mediawiki since around 2015. I've been to several conferences. Recently, I started also to work as a research assistant at my university, RWTH, and my colleagues Philip and Andre will be holding a talk today, and later this day we'll also meet again for a panel discussion about backends. For this topic, the Mediawiki 1.35 LTS migration, I've put up an agenda, and we only got 30 minutes, so I'm offering to do more than this after this, because this will be much too short to discuss all the details. But I prepared like the questions: should you migrate? What would be the effort to migrating? Is it reversible? That's probably one thing you're interested in. How to do it, like what prerequisites are there, why you should do a backup, why you should set up a trial environment and how the installation is in principle done. Then the major part is about the extensions. So what do you do about the extensions? Some of them are composer-based, others are manual. What's the process of doing that? And you can see in the next agenda point that the bad news is it's really try and error, and you need to debug a lot, and you'll probably find problems. Then I'll show you how in our environment we are using a wiki family and a site transfer automation to bring all our sites into a Mediawiki 1.35 environment and test things there. And we are very reluctant to really move there. At this time, we actually have 3 sites running at the same time with different versions. And only a few of our sites are in the latest version yet because we are still not happy. Then there will be questions and discussions. So let's go into the details. Mediawiki 1.35, you've got the link here and probably already visited it, is a long-term support version, and that's what makes it so interesting. The end of life of this version is 2023. This is not a lot of time, but at least if you go on to this version, it will buy you a few years of maybe happiness, or at least the option that you don't have to hassle about things too much. And that's part of the motivation, because why should you migrate? The version 1.27, on which, for instance, the main Bitplan wiki still runs, went end of life 2019. So in our environment, we are running on a Mediawiki version, which is not supported since 2 years ago. 1.31, the one that was a bit better, which I started using in only like in September last year, I was successful in migrating a few wikis to 1.31. And all of a sudden, a year later, it's out of life again. So we are in trouble. One good point is that this is an opportunity to clean and fix other things, because if you are in the same position that we've been in, that you got stuck with a version that's a couple of years old, you're probably as unhappy with the situation as we were. And that's a good opportunity to make decisions about, do I still need this extension? Do I still want to work it this way? Shouldn't I clean up some of my templates and some of the code? And then you've got this avoid the just upgrade shame, because if you do any complaint about anything that doesn't work in your old wiki, the developers will tend to you, yeah, what's your problem? Just go to the latest version and things will work. That's what they say. And then you'll learn the hard way that it's mostly not quite true. Just going to the latest version doesn't solve your problem. It's a big batch of problems that you have to solve at the same time. So what's the effort? Obviously, that depends. Some people will probably have only a few wikis and extensions and a pretty much standard installation. In those cases, it might be feasible to just push your button, do the update, and you're done. But I talked to Richard Heigl of Hello World, and his experience in his company was comparable to the experience we had in Bitplan and also in our research project. It's a multi-week effort. It's like any extension you look at, you have to look, does it still work for me? And you might have to fix it yourself. You might have to contact the developers. You might have to wait a bit until things work. So don't take this too lightly. So is this reversible? As you can see, it's just like a bungee jump. If you start jumping, you'll be falling, and here it's an all or nothing thing. Then you'll ask, really? And I'll say, yeah, there's no proper incremental way to go from one wiki to another. The way back is really hard. So I'd recommend that you don't take this too lightly and go with the assumption that you really can't go back. So what do you need? One of the major messages here is, since the PHP prerequisites have changed, you need a PHP which has a version 7.3.1.19 or up, which in our case meant we also had to change the operating system. We'd been running a server on the Ubuntu 18, and only by migrating to Ubuntu 20 and going to a new server were we able to successfully have a new PHP version. So we upgraded our service first. The Apache could stay the same, so the Apache upgrade from 2.2 to 2.4, that's been something we've done a couple of years ago. We took the opportunity to switch to a different SQL database. Some people probably still have a MySQL, the original Oracle version. And in our case, our decision was to go to a most recent MariaDB. While we were at it, we were also happy that the offerings got better. So like we run a server which is about €50 per month at Host Europe, and they've been offering us a machine now with 16 GB of RAM. And the first days was just awesome. Anything we installed there ran so quickly. It was amazing. Like 2 weeks later, things changed a bit. It seems like Host Europe keeps the service in an environment that's good for their own services for a while, and then you're put out in the wild and they start giving you less resources. But for the first few weeks, it was really awesome. And if that's the state of affairs, that's good. If your server runs quickly in the time where you have to do all the upgrades, that's a plus. So if while you're at it, you can get yourself a better virtual machine or a better hardware, that will help you a lot, because the installation process will be just much more smooth. So as with most things you do in life, you want to avoid risks. And the risk here is that you lose data. And if you want to avoid losing data, you might want to make a backup. The backup procedure for that, in our case, is something that we do sometimes daily, like the first one, the MySQL dump. That's something we do daily. And this is the line out of our backup script that we really use. The full script is obviously a lot bigger, but you need to do a MySQL dump. And we do a full dump so that we can completely recreate the database in which the Mediawiki installation keeps all its data. And you see there is a today timestamp. So, and we do that for all our wikis. We have a whole family of things, so everything is backed up nightly by cron job. The other part of the dump, there is an offering by Mediawiki to dump your images into an XML file. We tried it a while, and recently, like our whole server went down because these files.
Yep. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there seems to be some kind of a graphical problem. Oh, now it's gone.
There was a dialogue that popped up.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Shall I go back so that something that was not visible gets visible again?
Yes, please.
So did you see everything before?
Yeah.
That was like my Docker backup, okay. Docker installation. Are we fine? Okay.
Yeah, we're fine. Just continue. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So the instead of using the XML backup as I just started to tell, it was getting so big that it was eating up gigabytes of space, and for some reason we had a problem in there. So we love the rsync approach a lot better. And rsyncing means we only rsync the parts of the wiki that include the data, which is basically the images directory. We use a family approach, so all the code is in just one location, and all the wikis share that single code. I'll explain that later. And the rsyncing is just for the images directory. Of course, you might want to have a backup of all the stuff that you have in your wiki. So a full backup of your server, or a full backup of the directory, or how you do that. But that's usually a lot less in terms of the amount of space you need for that. Yeah, then you need a trial environment. So the main message here is kids don't do this in your production environment. If you hope that you could simply push a button and bring your production environment into Mediawiki 1.35, be warned, I'd never do that. If you try that, you might end up with a non-working environment and a lot of trouble. And if you don't have a backup, you are in double trouble. And then things might get really ugly. Better have the cat show up and give you problems as doing that yourself. Now we're at the installation part. The installation is just a standard Mediawiki installation, so I would not try to do some patching or something. Just grab yourself the latest 1.35 version, install it from scratch, and then the hard part begins, that you have to move extension by extension to the new wiki. Let's start with the composer-based ones. This is like the more fun part. So simply find out what versions you want to need. We're talking in the Semantic Mediawiki environment, so you probably want your Semantic Mediawiki. For my research project, I like the Semantic site. Semantic result formats is helpful. Page forms might be something you're using, or maps, or whatever is in your composer.local file, and then go ahead and simply do the installation for that. That's usually the part that doesn't give you too much trouble. And if you do some kind of test wiki, you can try out that everything is working. And up to that point, you'll probably not in trouble and just love your 1.35 installation, which is just so much nicer than the old ones. You might get a visual editor and all the new features. Until then, everything is probably great. The next thing you might want to do is look into your list of extensions. Take any approach for that. One would be create yourself an Excel table or put it on a piece of paper and grab yourself a list. And obviously, in our case, we did that a bit differently. So you'll find this right in our wiki. So this is like the wiki.bitplan.com. And there is a category extension, and then you can go into the list of extensions. And this is all like Semantic Mediawiki style that you can look into the things. And some of these extensions, I put some comments on there. You can even see on which machines things are installed here in that environment. So this is the style we did this. You can also find out since when these extensions were happening. And probably one column we might want to add here is which version of Semantic Mediawiki is officially supported. I didn't do that here because in any case, I was checking them anyway, no matter what they said. Even if an extension would promise to work on 1.35, I'd not trust that before really trying out things yourself. I can also pinpoint a few extensions that we ran into trouble with. One was the S5 slideshow that gave us trouble. Another one was the diagrams extension that gave us trouble. Some we didn't move yet, like the hit counters extension. The PDF embed, I had to work a lot with that, and there is an upgraded version of that. So one of the good news is that you can benefit from what's going on here. Like with diagrams, for instance, we're not through yet, but there is a discussion with Sam Wilson of Mediawiki Australia, was happily working on the recent patches, and in a few days we'll probably have a working diagrams version. So please stay tuned for some of these extensions. Brian, yes, so the slides will be available after the conference is finished, and that's one of the things. Like, we only got 30 minutes here, and I wanted to make sure that most of the documentation is available, and also some of the scripts I'm offering for solving the problems here. So how do you do the migration? At least I can report how we did it. We started with an empty list of extensions. We activated extension by extension, and on error, we fixed or disabled the extension. And that's the way to make sure that at least your wiki keeps running, because unfortunately, non-working extensions tend to break your whole wiki. You get an error message and the whole thing just stops working. And if you don't disable the extension, your users will not like it. And that's why you might want to be in a trial environment and only invite a few of your users to try out things before you go productive. Yeah, and in the end, you might want to debug things. So one of the bad news is we probably, as a community, have to work on all these things, and it will still take a while. 1.35 has been out a few weeks already, but I think it will still take weeks, months until the amount of happiness we can reach by the coverage that is reached increases to a point where more and more people will report, yes, it's no problem to migrate to 1.35. Obviously, that depends on your set of extensions. One of the things I appreciated here was that there's actually the option to debug things right in your Eclipse. I had tried that with Mediawiki 1.32, I redid it with Mediawiki 1.35, and you see here a setup that is working for me. And later in the after this session, if you like, we can do an online debugging session. But I didn't want to do that in the recorded part because some security-related stuff might leak out that way. But it's a good thing to have a debugging environment. I'm using Eclipse for that. And in principle, you could do a remote debugging. I tend to run the Eclipse right on my service. So I installed an Eclipse on my Ubuntu server and then was able to debug things. That was helpful for debugging, for instance, the PHP, the PDF embedded extension. That gave me a bit of trouble. Same with diagrams extension. You might want to go through these things step by step. And unfortunately, that means as an end user, you might want to ask somebody who can do these things for you. So you might need help if you are using extensions that are not very often used. You might try to approach the people that work on an extension. So let's take an example for the, what was the one where I tried to get in touch with the developers original? I think it might have been PDF Embed. Yeah, so this is my fork, and the original one was on was done by Alexia E. Smith, and that's an example where you can say, okay, then write an email to Alexia, try to work on these things, but if you don't get an answer, well, you have to work on these things yourself. And as you can see, I wrote a note here that I'm working on a pseudo fork here, and then if you have issues on this extension, please go to GitHub and tell me what's going on. And this was an example. I changed the stuff to 1.35, and as soon as I was using it on a 1.33.4, it failed again. So backwards compatibility is also a problem. If you fix the extension and you want to use the new features on the on an old version of Mediawiki, you might also be in trouble. One of the things that was quite helpful for us was that we were using the whole thing in a farm environment. So the code of all our wikis is the same. So I've started documenting that approach. So if you're interested in the wiki family approach, just use this page here. It shows you some of the configuration things. If something is missing, just approach me, because I'm willing to put almost everything which is not security related into the public domain. So you can see how we run our jobs here or other things. And you see there are two graphics. One is the one that you've seen in the presentation. It shows the basic principle, how with symbolic links to the code and with separate directories for images and content, and with special local settings for your sites, and with a common set of tools like the work site.php or a list of sites that you're doing, and the cron tab entries, you can run these things. And here's a more detailed version of that that shows you how that works. It looks a bit complicated first, but if you get that running and have the tools working, you will see that if you run a lot of wikis, it's a lot easier to work this way. So let's see how such a transformation from one, or transfer of a site from one infrastructure to another might work. So the servers we use at Bitplan have very short names. The oldest one is called io.bitplan.com. The second one is s.bitplan.com. That's the Ubuntu 18 one that we want to migrate from. And the new one is called q.bitplan.com. That's the Ubuntu 18 one. And basically, if you want to transfer a site from one of the wikis to the others, we do that in basically 4 steps, or 5 in this case. In the past, it was just one command. We didn't like that, so we changed it to have a script that does one step after another. And then now we can go through the steps. And if you get to see the parts of this script, which I'll publish, please ask me for it later. In the scripts, you'll see the steps that you usually do manually, and which is a lot of work to do right. So the first step is that you want to copy the configuration of your server. So if you're running Apache, you can use the same approach as we do here. If you use a different server, you still have the same task, but it might work a bit differently. So first thing the script does is looking whether there is a configuration for the site that you want to set up. And in our case, we set up a virtual host for every site we're running. You need a DNS entry. And depends on whether you have this under your own control. Like in our case, this is a fully configurable virtual host that we have full access to by terminal and whatnot. If you're running a hosted service that gives you limited access, it might be much more difficult to do this upgrading of your Apache environment. We split the basic setup, like the partner.com configuration here, and we have some aliases, some shared stuff. And at the end, you will just want to make sure that your Apache has a virtual host configuration for the site. Then you might want to change your domain name system entries. In this case, I was using the customer the KISS system, KIS Customer Integrated Support System of Host Europe, and I entered a CNAME for partner.q.bitplan.com, and that's just the copy of partner.bitplan.com that we want to set up to have a test environment. If that works, you should be able to ping your site, and it should be, in principle, available, but you want, as a next thing, you want to make sure that the content moves over. So that's done with an Rsync. First thing is we copy all the stuff that is relevant, in this case, the settings, which in our wiki family way are split into multiple files. Then we put the stuff under Git Control. That's something we do now because we want to be able to actually go back to something that happened a few days ago. And Git only takes like double the space that you need, and space is not that much a problem these days. And we also tag the local settings in an htaccess file because some modification might be necessary for your local copy, and you can check it out then to always go back to the state that is just in your copy but not in the original wiki. Then you need to transfer your SQL database. If you did your backup or you did the backup daily, you'll be able to simply copy it and then do an SQL restore. and set up the database. And at this point, your wiki will almost be workable. If you would run it at this point, you'd get an error message which says you have to run the update script. And that's what we also automated, running the update. This might take a while, and all the other stuff might also take a while. It's a few minutes in some cases, maybe even half an hour if you have a huge wiki. And when you're done with all that, hey, you can switch on the site, restart your Apache, and in our case, it will show up in your site. Actually, all this was just done this morning by me. So the site we're talking about, partner.q.bitplan.com, showed up there just this morning, and I tried out all these steps, and the screenshots you've seen were just done a few hours ago. And if you do it like, we can do this live again in a few seconds. Next thing you want to do is check the version and say, okay, what is it? So this is our partner.bitplan.com special. And that should be the 1.33 version. And if we do the same thing now with q.partner.bitplan.com, it says server not found. Thank you. I'm going to the slides.bitplan.com. That's another one that I migrated. And then we go to the admin links and go to the version. As you see, it's a Mediawiki 1.35. And this is part of the same farm. So probably the Apache setup was not working. But you see, we've got a PDF embed 204 here. And we've got a simple mass checks and whatnot and all the things that we wanted. And also one thing we would like to see is that the content shows over there. So this is the old content. And in the new wiki, would like to see the same thing. So this is a presentation I've been doing for a conference on Java. You see there are some videos in there and whatnot. And hopefully on your target wiki, you get the same result. So this is just 1 minute before we finish. So there's not much time in the official part of the presentation for questions, but I'm happy to answer some. So please let me know what you'd like to know.
Hey, thank you, Wolfgang. That was very inspiring. And you see in the chat that people are already asking if the slides are available after that talk.
Yes, that's true. I can put that in here again, and the slides are linked with the other stuff. So here's the slide link.
Yeah, so it's always possible that the speakers can upload their slides at Semantic, Mediawiki.org. And we are publishing the tutorials and the conference talks and presentations at YouTube after the conference, so that you can easily come back and go into the details. So I think that is a good was a very good introduction and very instructive to see how you are working with that issue. So maybe we could spend some time, just 5 minutes, for immediate questions. If there is somebody who has a question or something in addition, please feel free to ask now what the problems you had or or what you want to ask Wolfgang. Yeah, I can say that we at Hello World had some problems with the actor table. So that was the problem we had with the migration. And another thing is that with the new requirements, you need PHP 7.4, I think. No, my
Usually it's 7.3 something, but it makes sense to go to 7.4 directly.
So the requirements has changed, and for our customers, we recommend them to change the server environments, and this is always a bit a problem for some, because they have to order a new server and new environment, so that causes some problems sometimes. But
Leah, thanks. Leah is greeting Maria, so Maria can come over.
Hi.
Okay.
So the migration, one of the questions here is 1.35 migration, is that more difficult? I'd say the problem is that it was always difficult. 1.7 was already something you got stuck with. You might get stuck with. So basically, the answer to that is the pain gets greater all the time. If you're in the same situation as we've been, and you're stuck with 1.27, you get all these complaints and all these problems with all the extensions that aren't working, and you have to put up with it every day. And after a while, you're not happy with it anymore. So, and if then you successfully migrated at least part of your stuff to one of the intermediate versions, like 1.31 or 1.33, all of a sudden you find out, okay, I'm already again on an end-of-life version. So that's not fun. So at some point you have to make the decision, I want to be in a safe position, and 1.35 is a potential for such a safe position. But if you got stuck for years, obviously it's a big step, and in our case it is a big step. Going from 1.27 via all these you can do that in one step, of course, but then you have to select all the stuff that you say, okay, I was happy with that many years ago, but there's no upgrade available for a certain extension. There's no solution for doing it this way anymore. So you look for something else. I can show you examples for that. One of that would be the Pivo installation. Let's do this even in the recorded thing. So this is our main wiki, and one of the things we do there is Stromzähler. It's our energy meter. So this is the current reading of our energy meters, and it's read. It used to be read by an extension called external data, which Jaren Koren did, and I was not too happy with that anymore. So we changed it to using Pivo, which is an extension that uses Python to do this, and I like that a lot better. But basically, it's a different story to talk about Pivo, which we can do, but it shows you one of the decisions we made. We said, let's get rid of that. Later in the session that is not recorded, I might show you other stuff with personal data and whatnot, because some of the extensions we changed are linking into our customer relationship management system, and also we decided again we're going to do that differently. And those custom-made linking things to your personal needs, that's the one where we spend some effort and we're most interested in to get that working again, because we take some extra stuff there. And people who have watched what we've been doing in the past, we also have Java-based stuff which we want to migrate and so on. So there's a lot of migration work that is on top of the stuff that I've been talking about in the talk, which is like the public part of things, because intranet-wise we do a lot more than what I've shown here.